and also what are some of the key things which you need to look at while fitting the model. So these are the topics we are going to cover in today's session. Now if we just think about like what is regression, irrespective of why we are doing it and what are we trying to achieve as a result of that particular exercise. So we are trying to basically establish a relationship between our independent variables and dependent variables. So if we consider y as a function of x, right, here I am referring to y as a dependent variable, I am calling it as dv, and x may be a single variable or a set of variables. Now I'll represent x can be say x1, x2, so on till xn. So where n is the number of predictors while we are trying to estimate the value of y. Okay, so these are my independent variables. I am calling it as IVs. Okay, independent variables. So y being the label is dependent on my independent variables to estimate that. So here by regression what we are trying to do is, so we are going back and we are trying to understand like what is a probable relationship or what is the underlying relationship between my x or xs and y. So that is the whole motivation of regression. So here, and one more thing which we need to notice is that again when we are talking about linear regression and or the ordinal least squares regression, we are talking about parametric estimations. So where we are trying to identify the coefficients of my independent variables, which are my parameters, so which can be say c0, c1, so on, depending on the number of variables which we have. So these are my coefficients, so we are estimating these coefficients parametrically. Okay, now let's take a simple example, very simple example. Let's try to plot a straight line and see. So say this is my x-axis and this is my y-axis. Now if I draw a straight line, right, say this is guided by the equation y is equal to mx plus c. This is the also popularly known as the slope intercept form, where m is the slope of the line and c is the intercept. Intercept is nothing but this particular distance, so this is what I'm calling it as c, right. So this is the y-intercept, and slope is the slope of this line. So if you try to consider any 2 points x2 y2 and here x1 y1, so slope is given by m is equal to y2 minus y1 by x2 minus x1. So this is the slope intercept form of the line. Now we'll try to relate the same to linear regression, right. Say I need to determine my label y. This can in terms of when you come to linear regression, there is a continuous variable. Where, so if you say in the range, if you try to restrict y in the range of sorry, not this one, 1 to 100. Okay, so it can take any value in between 1 to 100, irrespective of whether it is a floating point number or it is an integer, anything. So that is what I mean by continuous variable. Now if I transform, if I extend this learning to this problem and say y is equal to beta naught plus beta 1 x1 plus beta 2 x2. So this is my equation for a linear regression where I have two independent variables, one is x1 and other is x2. Okay, so these are my coefficients which we need to estimate, and this can be treated as an intercept as well. Now let's see like what is the, so let's plot some points and see how the distribution is. So for example, we are trying to so these are simulated points where we are trying to simulate for a linear relationship between my y variable and x variables. Okay, now I can draw a line that can fit. This is my x-axis which corresponds to my independent variables. So let us say this is the axis where my x variables are there, and this is the axis where my dependent variable is there. Okay, so this is for my dependent variable. Now I can draw a straight line, so which can, so it's not exactly straight, apologies for that, but we can try to say, okay, this could be one of the functions that can determine the relationship between x and y. Okay, now so this function exactly is nothing but y is equal to 2x plus 5. So this is what is the straight line about. You can see the y intercept is at c, which is 5. So this is the y intercept. Okay, and the slope of the line is 2. So in this case the slope is 2. So any line with slope 2 and y intercept 5 will fit this particular equation, right? Now there might be complicated examples as well, so where the relationship is not exactly linear. Let's take an example of that as well. Okay, so till this point, do we have any questions? Okay, let's go ahead.
Do we only assume a linear relationship all the time?
So for the linear regression, yeah, that is the basic assumption, but there are ways to transform the relationship between there is a way to transform the independent variables. So where, for example, instead of linear there is a quadratic relationship, so then we'll have to transform our independent variables in a way that this relationship is captured. So for example, we have a relationship something like y is equal to say 4x square plus some constant, so which is like a parabolic relationship. So this is a quadratic function in x, right? So for that we need to transform our y or x variables correspondingly, so that we are able to capture that particular term. We'll be coming to that points in the assumptions of the regression. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, sure. So all those who have worked on linear regressions and who have studied a bit on assumptions of linear regression, so they might be very familiar with the topics which we are going to cover. And one more thing I would like to say is that so we'll also try to understand like what would happen if these assumptions are violated. So let's take a look at them one by one. So when we look at the ordinal least squares of trying to establish a relationship between x and y, so there are certain examples, there are certain assumptions which we are supposed to be bound by. Okay, so the first and foremost assumption is that there should exist a linear relationship between dependent and independent variables. So to the question which we have seen just now, that is the Bhaskell relationship, but we'll also see like what will happen if there is a non-linear relationship. So there is an example where we have a non-linear relationship, and so there we cannot with confidence like draw a line which we can confidently say would capture the relationship. So for example, even if I manage to draw some line which is like this, Okay, you cannot capture because your data is far away when compared to the line, right? So say look at the distance between this one and this one. So this is quite far, but if we draw some other line which is like this, which is like a bow shape, we are just assuming that okay, this might fit the distribution, but yeah, you never know. So these are some of the nonlinear relationships and how to encounter this. So that is something which we'll try to focus for quite some time. So what to do when your data looks something like this? So do you say okay, this cannot be solved? No, you cannot. You can definitely not say that, but you should make some changes. So for example, if you try to transform your independent variables, so one is one way to transfer you do it is transform your variables. Okay, so that is one way you can try to fit this line through this given data, and there might be many nonlinear relationships like a quadratic, logarithmic, but there are ways to overcome that. So another way is, so for example, there is a high variance in the data, so you can reduce the variance by doing couple of transformations. So one of the famous or popular method is apply a log transformation. So log transformation, the advantages is, so it reduces the variance. So it will appear more linear compared to the noisy, so high variance data. So those are couple of the things so which we might try to get the relationship to close to linear. So in reality, nothing is linear relationship, trust me, except for the textbook examples and the straight line equations which we are sure we know. So nothing can be linear in reality. So everything is approximation to linear. The same way we say everything is an approximation to normal distribution, and nothing is perfectly normal. So any questions with this nonlinear relationship?
Yeah, basically what you said was if the points are scattered as is shown in the diagram, we can use logarithmic functions to reduce the variance,
Yeah.
right? But so this is one set of data, but there will be other set of data which we can't. I mean, even using log or any other transformation method. So how do we distinguish whether to use this or some other thing? How do you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So that will depend a lot on so the first and foremost thing when you attack the problem is to put a scatter plot. So scatter plot will try to give you a trend. At least visually you can try to identify like what could be the probable relationship. So for example, in this case, this can be approximated to a log normal distribution. Okay, so but it may not be very evident at times, but like you said, if you are not able to determine anything, you should try to come up with the closest transformation which will capture at least most of the points, if not everything. So that is the best way you can do it. But when you try to go with other kernel based approaches and all, so there will be other methods by which you can transform your data, where you can have different kind of separations, and where you can try to project your points into a higher dimensional planes, so where your separation boundaries could change, but we are not still there. But these are the assumptions only for this ordinary least squares method. So but if you go to deep learning and all, so you need not even bother about these things because the features are all like feature, you need not bother about the feature engineering, etc., and also the variable transformations. So the activation functions and all would take care of that.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the next assumption, so which is a important one, and I think everybody must have heard of it. So next, the variables should be normally distributed. So here by variables I mean independent variables. So let me put that thing. Independent variables must be normally distributed. So we can check for the normality by using quantile plot. So where you can compare two probability distributions with visual inspection. So one key factor key reason why we assume the normal distribution is, so while computing the estimates of the ordinary least squares estimates, so they assume it follows a normal distribution. Okay, and so for that you need to have this near normal assumption. So that is also one of the reasons so why we need to transform the variables, and most of the times and in most of the cases it was it is believed that logarithmic transformation of your independent variables would make it near normal, not exactly normal but near normal. So there are both positive sides and negative sides of normal distributions, but you can read upon them further, but it is not a likely case always where it is good to have a likely or a desirable case where you should always have a normal distribution or a near normal distribution. So for now just and also one more thing is, so say if this particular assumption is violated, so what will happen if your normality assumption is violated? So this is one of the very tricky interview questions which I have come across. So people would usually consider this as a bouncer, and so I would like to know, like from our audience, like if somebody is available aware of this particular question. So what would happen? So can someone answer?
So when this assumption is violated, then your estimates are not blue, basically best linear unbiased.
Yeah, so yeah, you're almost there. So the exact answer is, so once the linear regression model is fit, so there will be estimates, right? So estimates for each of the predictor. So this estimates will have a confidence interval, Ci I'm calling it. So this confidence interval, this upper bounds, it is bound by say this is a lower bound, this is upper bound. So it really gets complicated to compute this upper and lower bounds of your confidence interval for these estimates. So you cannot really confidently say that okay, this would be my upper bound of this particular estimate or this coefficient. So that is what will happen if my normality assumption is violated. Okay. So any questions on this particular assumption? Okay, I am taking it as a no, and let's move on to the next one. Now, yeah, this is one of the most interesting assumptions. So, homoscedasticity of my error terms. So, what do you mean by homoscedasticity?
So my the variance of the error is dependent upon the independent variable values. So if suppose in this figure, if my independent variable is increasing, the variance of the error is also increasing, but it should be independent.
Yes, right. That is correct. So this particular assumption assumes it says it also, in other words, it is also saying that error should be independent and random. It should not follow a certain distribution, or it should not show some evident pattern, as in this case. So for example, what you are seeing is with the increase in x, so your errors are like increasing, like there is a clear trend that errors are increasing. So this doesn't show, this shows that okay, there is some kind of trend which we are not able to capture with the given predictors. So this should not be the case. So in ideal case, it should be something like, say if this is your graph of the errors, and so these are how my errors are. Okay, so you can see some kind of randomness, but there is no trend. So if you follow through the x-axis, the distribution of the errors around this zero line is almost same. So this can be assumed as a random process. Okay, for example, if my errors are somewhat like these, so there is an obvious concern that, so as my x is increasing, there is some kind of trend which says my errors in y, the errors are also like spreading like this, as we are seeing in this kind of figure. So that is what is called heteroscedasticity. That means that the variation increases, and this is the homoscedastic data. So errors, so it shows a steady pattern or a steady nature, or there is no increasing or decreasing nature of the variance in the errors. So this is a homoscedastic data. So this is one of the most important assumptions, that your errors should be homoscedastic, because that clearly violates the basic laws of assumption. And also, what will you do if your errors are also normally distributed? So is it a reasonable case or unreasonable case? Any thoughts, guys? So this is a question for you.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what if my errors are normally distributed?
I think errors should be normally distributed. This is the assumption of linear regression.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is the one of the assumption that the error should be normally distributed.
So say if errors are like zero throughout, so does that follow a normal distribution?
Errors are zero throughout.
Yeah, say
no.
my EI is like set of all zeros. So is it a normal distribution?
The model is a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in I mean, it here the mean, median, mode, everything is same. So but you can't have errors as zero. I mean, it's not possible.
Okay.
Yeah, have errors as zero if the data is. I mean, if you're manipulating the data in such a way that it fits a linear curve, you can have errors as zero.
Okay. So
True.
yeah. So I would like to like you all to think about this and come back. So this is like, so this looks simple, but this is really difficult to prove that zeros are not normally distributed here. So just try to think about it. We'll come back to this one in tomorrow's class. Okay. Now let's move on to the next assumption. Sorry, do you have any questions regarding this one? Homoscedasticity and heteroscedasticity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understood homoscedasticity. Sorry, heteroscedasticity. Homoscedasticity was.
So homoscedasticity is constant variation of errors. So say we have errors which are plotted here. So this is I'm pointing it as E. So there is randomness in the errors. So it doesn't follow a particular distribution in general. So this is homoscedastic.
Okay, and hetero would be it constantly increases.
Yeah,
with-
there is some kind of pattern in the errors, so which we didn't capture due to some assumptions which we made in the normality or any other thing earlier.
Right. Got it.
Okay. So can we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one more important assumption is there should not be any multicollinearity between the independent variables. So I'll tell you like what is meant by multicollinearity. So multicollinearity is a phenomenon. So when you have say your independent variables, say x1, x2, so on till xn, and say two of your variables, say x1 and x2, they have a strong correlation. Say correlation between my x1 and x2 is like 0.8. That means they are related. Okay. So what will happen is, so there are two things so which will come out of this. So one is redundancy. Okay. So for example, I'll tell you what redundancy means. So you're trying to predict the number of visitors. Okay. So say the quantity they purchased, say let's look at a single product. So can someone who is not speaking go on mute, please? There's a lot of background noise. Thank you. There is a so you want to predict the total revenue. Okay. So revenue as a function of quantity and price and say price per unit. Sorry, it is sorry, not price per unit. So let's say it is the ticket value or the total bill, quantity and price. So if you try to closely follow that, so for a single quantity, so ticket value would be quantity into price per unit, right? So this will have a correlation with so these three variables will have correlation between each other. So when you try to take two at a time, right? So that will introduce a redundancy. So it is sufficient to take two, but you are also taking the third one. So this will create challenges when you are trying to collect some additional information, and in some cases if there are more predictors, so your estimates can go haywire. Okay. So and second problem with this correlation is you will have inconsistent estimates. Okay. So one is redundance and inconsistency in estimates. So that you can verify using variance inflation factor. So the R square here is the strength of the variance explained by, say you will have two independent variables x1 and x2, if you try to consider one of these as your independent variable, dependent variable, and other is independent variable, and try to find r square. So this is the r square which I am talking about here. Okay. So your variance inflation factor will be like, so for example, if between the two variables the r square is say 0.8, so VIF will be nothing but 1 divided by 1 minus 0.8, which is 5. So this may be high in some standards, and some standards this may be acceptable. So it all depends on, again, on the business problem and how many other variables you have for prediction. So this is something which is which can concern in some cases. So there is a high variability which is explained by x1 with respect to x2 or vice versa. Okay. So ideal cases, so what will happen is, so when this value, so when this x is very small, so this is approximately equal to 1. So that is the ideal case, but for practical purposes it is said that it is agreed that anything within 5 or equal to 5 is acceptable. So that is what multicollinearity means. And any questions on this particular assumption? And also, if you are using R, I'm not sure if you have a function if you have an inbuilt module which can give you VIF, because I remember last time we built in R, we wrote a custom function to get the VIF, and same is the case with Python. I think, but in SAS you have a ready-made availability, so where you can pass VIF as a parameter, right?
Yes, in SAS and procrex statement, you can specify /VIF, you get VIF.
Correct, right. Okay, so we are moving on from this, and there is also one more assumption which I've never purposefully dropped, so that the errors should not be there can also be a fifth one, which could say the errors should be independent. Okay, so your errors should not be a linear combination of each other, which means that there is a basic flaw in our model. That means that there is no randomness and errors are related, and there is some other dimensions of the data which we are missing. So this is very much evident when you are trying to use time series. So where you will have your current time dependent on a previous time t minus n. So this is and the errors may also be correspondingly related. So this is something which should be avoided at all costs. And if so, I can bring more examples if required in tomorrow's session. So for now, just make a rough note of this. And yeah, so moving, so these are basically the important assumptions which we need to keep in mind before we jump into building the linear regression models. Now, yeah, so how do you, so when we go to the model building, so how do you understand what is a kind of relationship that exists between x and y? So what is the parameter that captures what is the kind of variance that is there in my independent variables, and how do I explain that? So that is done by this particular parameter, so which is I think very popular with all the data scientists or predictive analysts. So this is called the coefficient of determination. So this is explained by this particular formula. So this is like so what you need to do is you need to subtract the fraction of unexplained variance by total variance from 1, so that will give you r squared. And there is also one more r squared term which is called adjusted r squared. So can someone who is familiar with this term tell me, like, what is the difference between r squared and adjusted r squared?
Yeah. So I mean, adjusted R square penalizes when you add extra variables or redundant variables in your model. So I mean, if you keep on adding more and more independent variables, you will be able to explain the dependent variable. But there is a problem. There is a penalization for that. If you add more variables than what is required, and then there it comes the adjusted R square. So it penalizes for every redundant or unwanted variable, independent variable you add in the model.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. So r square explains the percentage variability in y that is made by your independent variables. Okay. Now adjusted r square, it penalizes. So for if you say this is my r squared and there is a penalization parameter, okay, so which we always multiply with r squared, so every time we add a new variable, so it is something like n minus k minus 1 by n minus 1, so where n is called degrees of freedom and k is the number of additional predictors we are using. So, and some cases n is also referred to as a total number of independent variables. So this term is always trying to shrink the value of r square. So n minus k minus 1 by n minus 1 is always going to be less than 1. So it is when you multiply something less than 1, so that will always shrink the value. So this will bring down the r square. So for stability purposes, it is suggested that you always use the value of adjusted r square. And like we discussed, so or like someone pointed out, so as you add more and more variables to the model, so r square will keep on increasing. So that is the nature of r square. So to reduce that effect, so we are trying to multiply by this factor to diminish to add as a penalty. So that is what is meant by r squared. And one more thing we want to point out here is, so when you say r squared, do not get confused with the small r. Okay, so this is nothing but the correlation coefficient. Okay, so if you try to find the correlation between x and y, so that is nothing but your r, small r. Okay, now correlation is nothing but the strength of relationship, strength of, I would say, mathematical relationship between two variables. But correlation is only mathematically valid, but it is not statistically, or you cannot make an inference from a correlation. I'll tell you why. So there are the correlation is like, say for example, say with the number of years of your experience. So if you try to plot the years of experience, your salary increases. Okay, so this is your years of experience and this is your salary. Okay, that is increasing. Now, so this can be a correlation. Okay, right? But so there can also be the same graph studied by someone else. We're saying that, okay, with my so somebody who is like a 40-year-old and who is saying that years of experience, and say he is in some kind of job that would involve manufacturing or something. So as he gets older, that thing might drop, right? So here in this particular region, that might be true, but if you come to this region after a certain age, say greater than 40 or 45, so your physical strength reduces, and so there are some other factors which will reduce your efficiency, or so in this case it may not be the same thing. So there is a correlation, but that may not necessarily explain the causation, but I'll give you a very good example for that. So this I picked up from a famous story where one person who owned a car has returned to the head of the automotive company or vice president, saying that, so this says that he has been writing to him for some time, and he is not he just wanted to bring up a weird or crazy experience, saying that, so this person goes to a departmental store every night, and he tries to pick up dessert, which is an ice cream. So he says that every time he picks up vanilla ice cream, so his car refuses to start, and if he tries to pick up some other flavor, it always starts. So he tries to pick up different flavors every time, but it always happened that whenever he picked up a vanilla ice cream, that never started. So this seems funny to everyone, but maybe it will also try to push us, if the same experience happened with us, into doubts as well. Like we'll become more superstitious when purchasing a vanilla ice cream. But also there is a key thing which they have observed. So a technician was sent to understand like what exactly is happening. So for example, what happened was exactly, so he goes to the the technicians have observed that a pattern. Okay, so first thing is try to study what is happening. Okay, study or observe. So the technician went to that, and they tried to understand like, okay, what is happening exactly. So when he is purchasing vanilla, so they tried to capture the time, and other flavor also they try to capture the time. Okay, so it seemed that vanilla he took less time. Okay, so for example, if he usually takes 10 minutes to pick up other ice creams, so vanilla he has only taken 3 minutes. That is because if you look at the composition of a store, so this is somewhere, if you know this is the entrance of the store, and this is where vanilla ice cream was there, and this is where this is the other flavors of the ice creams were put, and this is where the vanilla was put. Okay, so what happened is, so he used to go and come back to his car, which was parked somewhere over here. So they came to a conclusion, that they came to an evident conclusion that based on his shopping patterns and all, so it is the engine is getting vapor logged. So but when he is going to the other flavors, so he is taking some time, and the engine heat is getting settled down or coming down, and then the vapor lock problem was not existing. So this is how they try to see like whatever the user has written about his concern is a correlation, but that exactly is not the cause of the problem. The exact cause of the problem is this, where due to that time during which the engine needs to cool down, it's not getting cooled down. This is the exact cause. So this is a classic example where correlation and causation should not be confused, and also we should always say that correlation doesn't imply causation. So that is the thing that should be ingrained in your heads. Okay, so any questions for this particular relationship, determination, etc.? Okay, so are we clear on the concepts of correlation and causation? Okay, we'll just move on to the next one. Next we go to the model fitting. So this model fitting also has so in terms of when we look at the ordinary least square, so this is also called a curve fitting. Okay, so curve fitting is nothing but we are trying to identify an underlying function, so which is best fit to the data points which determine the distribution. Okay, so now let's look at once the curve is fit or the model is fit, so we should also try to understand whether it is a good fit or a bad fit, or it is insufficient data, so that is creating bad fit. So these are the things we need to determine. So we cannot just say that okay, these are my x variables, this is my y variable, and I'll do an OLS regression and fit this and then forget about everything else. So that is not the case. So first and foremost thing you need to do is, so you need to understand the nature of your fit. So if you observe this, so it is difficult to make out, but this is the same function which we had used initially to determine our vanilla example. So y is equal to 2x plus 5. But can someone guess like what happened to this one now? It doesn't look linear, right? But this is the same function but with a small modification. Anybody? Okay, shall I give the answer? So this is just same version, but it is a log transformed variant of that. So let me try to do with the traditional curve fitting process, and I assume it is a linear function, and I just do a curve fitting. Okay, so this is something I have given as the best fit line. Okay, so but if you see, these are points which are like not covered, so it should have been something of this sort rather than this one, right? So this is not the right way to do it. So we also need to verify like whether what we are doing is right or not, and accordingly we'll have to look at transforming our variables. So for example, if we try to take log on both sides, so then this linear relationship assumption would still be valid, right? So that is something which we need to determine either before we fit the data or after we fit the data. So these are some of the checks which we need to do. Okay, now so this is the idea of curve fitting, and as next steps, so we'll be looking at what are the checks for goodness of fit. What are the parameters we need to consider to verify the goodness of fit, and so how to determine the significance of variables, and we'll talk more about hypothesis testing and p-values here, and also standardized estimates. So these are additional things, so which I have reserved for tomorrow's session. So I would like to take up any questions that we may have in today's session.